by Gold Athletics. I'm your host, John Serenitas. And as always, I'm joined by my partner, Tyler Amaral. Tyler, how are you this evening?
I'm doing good. It's not even Black Friday yet. You see, I'm a little festive here. Got the Christmas decorations up
It's all
already.
right.
So
It's okay if you put it up now. It's the people that drive me nuts are the people that put it up like the day after Halloween. Like, knock it
yeah,
off. We don't need, let's get through Thanksgiving first, or at least get to Thanksgiving week. So to me, what you're doing is fine. It's
yeah,
Thanksgiving week. I mean, it's a short holiday season, really, because Thanksgiving is so late. You only really have about 3.5 weeks until Christmas. So you know what? You might as well put it up. But the people that put it up after Halloween, it just drives me nuts. Do want to remind you that this Thanksgiving edition of the High School Preview Show is brought to you by Gold Athletics. Gold Athletics is your one-stop shop for fundraising. They recently expanded into Maine and New Hampshire with Blaze and Jeff Whitman. They are ready to support even more programs across New England. Whether you're in football or any other sport, reach out to Gold Athletics and they'll make sure your program raises the money. All right, Tyler, of course, Thursday is Thanksgiving, and it's the traditional Thanksgiving football game. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut all play on Thanksgiving. The Maine football season is done. The Vermont football season, believe it or not, has been done for a couple of weeks now. New Hampshire has their Division I state title game on Saturday with Londonderry and Pinkerton. We're going to take a look at that one at near the end of the show. We're going to kind of bounce around here. We're going to take a look at about 6 or 7 Thanksgiving matchups. Then we're going to talk a little bit MIA Super Bowls, just some early thoughts. Of course, we'll have the preview show next week. And then we'll also get into that Pinkerton Londonderry matchup. And then, of course, next week, the CIAC playoffs kick off as well on Tuesday. So we're going to talk about those. We'll have a separate preview for the CIAC playoffs as well. But you know, we were talking before we went live, and Thanksgiving is just not what it used to be. Let's be honest here. It's changed drastically from what it used to be. And I know there's a lot of people now that are Thanksgiving seems to be like a yearly argument now. Should we be playing on Thanksgiving? Does the Thanksgiving game have any more value? Is it important enough to keep playing? Or are we better off not playing on Thanksgiving and having a full regular season and a true playoff? Look, you could have had both. We've been down this road before. Clearly, the state of Massachusetts isn't ready for real change when it comes to high school football, because if it was, then that proposal that was put forth by Steve Dombrowski last month would have passed. It didn't for a variety of reasons. Winter coaches complaining, Division I coaches fearing that they might not be able to make the playoffs. The reluctancy to go from 16 to 8 playoff teams. There was a variety of reasons that it didn't pass. However, Thanksgiving is still important to a lot of communities, and it still matters. Unfortunately, what we've seen, and you and I were just talking about it, is you're seeing a lot more of these games now being played on Tuesday night. Of course, you had 2 at Fenway tonight. And by the way, Nantucket beat Martha's Vineyard in overtime 22-14. And Stoneham and Reading is going on right now at Fenway Park. Lawrence, Central Catholic, and Marblehead Swampscott are going to play there tomorrow night. But there's a bunch of games that are played now on Wednesday night. I hate it. I can't stand it. I know this year the weather's supposed to be tricky on Thursday morning, so I know some schools move their games to Wednesday night. But for me, Tyler, Thanksgiving is still important. It's still an important part of the New England football landscape. These games should be played on Thursday morning. They're not going to be. But in my opinion, I think Thanksgiving's been diminished.
Yeah, for sure it's been diminished. There was nothing like Thanksgiving morning when a playoff spot was on the line. They're fun. I do like this playoff format more than what we had before. So I think we're kind of in the middle right now. It's not as good as Connecticut, but it is better than what we had forever until 2013. Certainly been diminished, but you see it from time to time, these crowds. And so you mentioned some communities, it still matters. And then you mentioned one of these games at Fenway, Marblehead Swampscott. When we saw that game 3 years ago, the crowd was electric. It came down to the final seconds. So it does really still matter to some communities across the state. I think it's still a good day. I'm looking forward to it. I'll be at Mashpee versus Sandwich on Thursday morning. I'm really looking forward to that one. The thing that bothers me the most is the Wednesday night games. Like, I'm totally cool with like the Fenway experience. You want to get a couple games there a year.
Yeah, me too.
Two on Tuesday, 2 on Wednesday. perfectly fine. But these other schools that are like deciding to play on Wednesday, why? Like, we're not having a tornado or a hurricane Thursday morning. It's just some rain. Like, we're good. We're going to survive. So I think the games just need to be played on Thursday morning. But and I would say in a lot of communities, it really does matter. Or not even like town communities, just like school communities. Like that Xaverian St. John's Prep game, that's going to have an awesome atmosphere. Catholic Memorial, BC High, again, that's going to have an awesome atmosphere. So it really does matter to a lot of schools. I think it's actually tomorrow night, but Fenwick, St. Mary's, like that game, they should have been playing each other all along on Thanksgiving. So it's good to see that one's coming back. Two smaller Catholic schools. It's still important. It still matters. In some instances, league titles are still on the line. So I think you will see a good turnout, just not maybe what we saw 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, and look, I get it. Times change. The landscape changes. I mean, I remember for years, on Thanksgiving Day, you had your game, you had dinner with the family. It's my favorite holiday. I think it's the purest holiday we have left. It hasn't been bastardized and commercialized like Christmas has and some of these other holidays. I mean, you can't go wrong with food, family, and football. I mean, how does it get any better than that? And there's no stress involved. Well, I guess for the people that are hosting, but there's no stress involved if you're just showing up, eating, hanging out, and watching the greatest game on earth. But I used to love coaching my game, spending time with the family, having the traditional dinner, and then turning Lynchy on at 7 o'clock or 7:30 that night after the Cowboys game and watching the highlights of the day's games and looking forward to the Super Bowls. And that's gone now, though. Butch Stern and Boston 25 are doing a show on Thursday night at 10:30. So I'm excited about that. Butch does a great job with his team over there. But, I just think, to me, paint me a traditionalist. I don't really care. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. You have games tonight in Rhode Island. You have games. Some of these schools played for state titles over the weekend. A couple of them are playing tonight. It's like I don't understand how they played 3 days ago, in some cases 2 days ago, and they're playing again. Like, it's just, and here we are talking about safety and all this other bullshit. I mean, give me a break. It's sad to see, and I've said it all along. And listen, I think anybody that knows me knows I'm an unabashed football guy. I don't give a rat's ass about these other sports. All I care about is football and what's best for the game that I love and that we love. And I think at the end of the day, like you said, it's not like a hurricane is coming up the coast here on Thursday morning. It's late November. Newsflash, it gets cold. You get a wet, you get rain, you get a mix. It happens. It's that time of the year. It's disappointing to see how many schools, even if the weather wasn't an issue on Thursday, though, Tyler, a lot of these schools had already been moving these games to Wednesday night. And some of it, I got to be honest with you, and I'm not going to make a lot of friends when I say this, some of it I attribute to just flat out athletic department laziness. They just want to get the football season over with, and they want to get a long weekend in before the winter sports season starts. And that's fine. It's not football's fault that the winter calendar in Massachusetts sucks and it makes no sense. It's not that the fault of any other sport, but hey, it is what it is. But it's still a great tradition. I battle with friends of mine who think we should get rid of it. I think it's idiotic to get rid of it. Like I said, we have the perfect proposal in place to solve it all. 10-week season, 2 byes. Thanksgiving still matters. You play your playoffs after Thanksgiving. All you literally had to do was extend the season 1 more week, and then you would have been fine. You still could have started winter sports the Monday after Thanksgiving. They chose not to pass it. It just proves once again that when it comes to doing the right thing, Massachusetts is not very smart. All right, so, all we're really going to do here when it comes to the Massachusetts games is we're going to take a look at some of the traditional games. Like I said, a lot of games being played tomorrow night. They've been played on Wednesday night for a while now. So, again, I don't think it's weather-related. But, of course, we're going to start with the big one in the Bay State League, Wellesley-Needham. Needham, of course, is going to be playing in the Division I Super Bowl a week from Thursday at 5:30 against Xaverian. But they are hosting Wellesley in what, in my opinion, is the best Thanksgiving rivalry in the state. I don't think too many people would argue with that. I always point to this game, Tyler, when I say that if you're going to get rid of Thanksgiving, you're going to have to go through Wellesley and Needham to do it. But this should be another fantastic matchup. Of course, Wellesley losing to CM on Friday night in the playoffs. A good Wellesley team that's got some youth at the skill positions, and they're set up to be pretty good the next couple of years. But this should be a pretty fun matchup.
It will be a fun matchup. It always is. And it always gets chippy. These teams don't like each other at all. Kevin will be there to antagonize people. So we might get another fight at Needham Wellesley. But no, really, it should be a good game.
The ultimate flame stoker, Kevin Stone.
It should be a good one. I mean, Needham, honestly, like we'll talk about this next week, but that Division I game is going to be a real toss-up. Needham's arguably a top two team in the state, maybe the best team in the state. They're still undefeated. I think they keep that rolling. But again, this is a chippy game. Two towns that don't like each other. Oldest rivalry. It's like on paper, I would say Needham should win by like 3 scores, but I think it'll be closer than that ultimately, just because of the rivalry and the pride these programs have.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other thing to keep an eye on here is how much does Needham play their starters? Do they play all their starters? If you got guys that might be nicked up, do you sit them out? Look, they're not going to sit their starters. Okay. They're just not going to do it. Schools just don't do it anymore. I think there's been so much backlash through the years for the programs that are playing after Thanksgiving that sat their starters. And I think a lot of coaches just look at this and say, yes, you're rolling the dice because anything could happen. But at the end of the day, this is too big of a game. It's too important in these two communities not to play your starters. So I fully expect Coach Kopsko and the Needham staff to play their starters. I think it's going to be a hell of a football game. As I mentioned, Wellesley's coming. They're going to be a really good program here the next 2 years. They're on the doorstep now. It's going to be a really close game. It's going to be a competitive game. But, man, if there was ever a year for Needham, this is it. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl matchup a little later and next week, but this will be a great game. I like Needham here, too, at home in a close one. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, next up, you mentioned it earlier, St. John's Prep Xaverian, who is playing in the Division I Super Bowl, looking to go back-to-back. They are on the road to take on St. John's Prep, a St. John's Prep team that I think we can comfortably say has been a disappointment. And by the way, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this comment on the screen. Where do I send the check? That is the Massachusetts High School Football Coaches Association. Hit me up in my DMs. I'll send you my address. I'm kidding, of course. But thanks for checking into the Coaches Association. And, of course, they do unbelievable work. Steve Dombowski and those guys, they're looking forward to seeing them this offseason. But St. John's Prep Xaverian, again, Xaverian in the same boat as the other schools that are in the Super Bowl. Tough, who do you play? Who do you not play? This is too big of a game. They're going to play everybody. I think it should be another good one between these two longtime rivals.
I can't imagine we see Vince Abusa in this game. Hurt against BC High, second time he's been injured this year. They finished strong with Bryce Todd and Luke Bells, these guys emerging in that win over BC High in the semifinals. So I think Busa will be out in this one. Looks like the teams will be at full strength. Other than that, I still think this is a toss-up. I know St. John's Prep, they got blown out against CM. I don't I think it sounds more like an upset, Needham over St. John's Prep, more than it actually was an upset. This Needham team, super talented, super physical. We mentioned last week, they can match the strength, the physicality of these Catholic schools. They have 3 D1 commits, so it's not your average public school. Needham's a damn good team. So I think, and it was a close game. They had a chance to tie the game down there at the end, and Needham made it play defensively. So I think the St. John's Prep team is good. Xaverian might have some injuries. They might want to rest some guys here. I think this is sort of a toss-up a little bit. I picked St. John's Prep twice over Xaverian last year. I was wrong both times. Maybe third time's a charm here. I've got St. John's Prep, but I think it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good one, too. It always is. Obviously a disappointing season for the Prep. They have much higher expectations than this, and I think they're going to come to play. I think that ultimately what it comes down to is, you mentioned Vincent Busa. I don't think he plays either. That makes a difference, even though Xaverian's been able to develop some depth at the running back position. I think ultimately Xaverian will make this competitive. It'll be a close game. I'm with you. I picked the Prep last year, too. I also picked him in the Super Bowl. Shame on us. I do think, though, however, Xaverian wants to win this game, but it's a delicate balance for Al Fornaro and his staff. I'm going to go with the Prep here. I think it's close, but I think the Prep pulls away late. Next matchup we're going to take a look at is Dartmouth at Fairhaven. Of course, Fairhaven is playing in the Division 6 Super Bowl for the second straight year. They're looking to defend their Division 6 crown. They're going to be playing Hudson in a matchup that I think a lot of us saw coming at the beginning of the year. If they ended up on the other side of each other in the brackets, it was inevitable that they were going to play each other. That being said, Dartmouth lost a couple of weeks ago in the second round. They've had a couple of weeks to prepare for this one. Last game for Jackson Hart and that talented senior class for Dartmouth. Again, Derek Almeida is going to have a dilemma here. How much do you play Justin Marks? How much do you play your key guys ahead of a state title game? I'm going to guess Marks plays. He probably doesn't get his customary 35, 40 carries, but I do think he plays. Nonetheless, I like Dartmouth in this one. I just think that they have more at stake here. I think they're going to come out flying. I think Jackson Hart and the senior class go out on top.
There's just like something about these big games where Derek Almeida wants to feed Marks. There's some things at stake here. Like he's at 109 touchdowns right now for his career, which is 8 more than Izzo. So he's like, if he puts together 2 more monster games here, like 120 is realistically in the conversation. He could score 11 touchdowns in these final 2 games. So he could get up to 120, just completely shatter the all-time record. And he could also, I believe he has 39 touchdowns too. So he's 11 away from a 50 touchdown season, which is just absurd. So again, I think Almeida wants to win this game. I think he wants to, in these big games, they give the ball to Justin Marks. I think they know, obviously they know what they have, and he's a workhorse and he can handle it. I think maybe not 45 carries, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets 30. I like Fairhaven here.
Look, in 2018, when I was the offensive coordinator at KP, we played at Franklin. We had a running back by the name of Ryan Halliday. And going into that game, I said to Coach Lee, I said, look, we need him for the Super Bowl. We were going to be playing North Andover in the Division II Super Bowl. And I said, we can't run him into the ground. Some of these other guys are going to have to get touches. He was our workhorse. He basically got us there. He had, I believe that year, we gave him the ball 336 times or some ridiculous number. So going into that game, I said, look, we're going to limit him to about 10 to 15 carries. We're going to have to figure out a way to win this thing with other people chipping in. Well, lo and behold, he got 36 carries. So the plan didn't work, because once you get into a flow as an offensive coordinator, you want to get your dudes the ball. He was our dude that year. We were going to give him the ball. So my guess is that Almeida will be facing a similar conundrum, but my guess is also that he is going to give Marks the ball, maybe not 40 times, maybe it'll be 30, but he'll get enough touches that he can certainly get a couple of scores at least under his belt, and and challenge the 50 touchdown mark for a season, and as you mentioned, 120, which both are well within reach. I mean, with the numbers that he's put up in the last 2 years, both are a distinct possibility. All right, next up we have Franklin traveling to King Philip. The Kelly Rex Division title is on the line here. Of course, the Warriors are riding a 24-game winning streak. They're going to be playing in the Division II Super Bowl against Catholic Memorial next Thursday night at 8 p.m. Franklin, pretty good first year under Todd Kiley. Lost to Methuen in the first round. They did lose to Natick a couple of weeks ago, so they've had a couple of weeks to prepare for this one. This is one of the better rivalries in the area. It was a rivalry that for a long time was very much just the two schools, but with the recent success of KP and the recent success of Franklin as well, this rivalry has grown. Should be a pretty good game between two teams that have a genuine dislike for each other.
Yeah, it's always a pretty good one. Always one you circle on the calendar. You look forward to see what that score was each year. I know KP wants to win this one, win the conference outright, and go into Gillette with some momentum. I think they are able to do that. The defense is too good. The running game's too good. Franklin will hang tough for a bit, but KP is going to pull away in this one. I like the Warriors.
And as always, I'm going to be coaching in that game, so I'm going to recuse myself. All right, next up, we've got another big one in the Hockomock League, and this one is for the Davenport title when Mansfield travels to Foxborough. A lot at stake here. Both of these teams are playing in Super Bowls. Of course, Foxborough is going to take on Shawsheen next Friday at 5:30 in the D5 Super Bowl. Mansfield is going to close out Super Bowl week, taking on North Attleboro next Friday night at 8 p.m. I mentioned that the Davenport is at stake here. For Mike Redding, if Mansfield wins this game, it'll be his 300th win. So a lot on the line here in what is one of the best rivalries in Eastern Mass. This should be a tremendous football game.
Yeah, at the beginning of the show, I mentioned that Marblehead Swampscott game in 2021. Both teams are playing at Gillette that year, and it came down to the final seconds. I think we see something similar here. I think it's always going to draw a great crowd, but especially when the teams are this good and they're both fighting for a state championship the week after Thanksgiving. I think it's going to be an awesome game. I think Foxborough kind of works a little bit more of that late game magic and finds a way to win. We saw that last week where they didn't really have much going against Hanover all game, scored 14 unanswered, including Ben Angelini's 76-yard touchdown run with under a minute left. So I think Foxborough finds a way to win this one.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a tremendous game, and this is a tough one for me, living in the Foxborough community, but then also having a lot of friends on that staff. My nephew plays for Mansfield, so, of course, I'm always rooting for him, and I'm hoping he has a great game on Thursday and in the Super Bowl. You know, look, I covered this game last year, and it was back and forth, but then Foxborough pulled away, and then they blew it open in the second half. I don't think this game's going to play out that way. There's no Mazeikis O'Grady on the Foxborough sideline this year. He kind of took that game over last year, as did Lincoln Moore. With that said, I think that Foxborough, you're right, to your point, they're playing their best football of the season right now. They didn't play great last week, but they did enough to win, and it speaks to how battle-tested and experienced they are. I'm going to give them the edge here because I think they're at home. I think it's going to come down to the wire. But I think for Mike Redding to win 300, I do think he's going to have to wait until Gillette Stadium. And wouldn't that be something, though, if the Hornets are able to capture the Division III Super Bowl and he picks up his 300th win simultaneously? That would be a pretty special night for Mansfield football. But trust me when I tell you, they want to win this football game. Believe me, it's not going to be they're not looking past Foxborough and ahead to the Super Bowl because, again, as I mentioned, both schools are playing in the bowl. You are watching the high school preview show presented by Gold Athletics. I'm your host, John Sirenitas. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Tyler Amaral. And we do want to remind you that Gold Athletics is your one-stop shop for fundraising. They have recently expanded into Maine and New Hampshire with Blaze and Jeff Whitman. They are ready to support even more programs across New England. Whether you're in football or any other sport, reach out to Gold Athletics, and they'll make sure your program raises the money. All right, next up we got Quincy, North Quincy, and another traditional rivalry game in Eastern Massachusetts. This one goes back a long way. I've actually coached in this rivalry for a year. I mean, I know how intense this rivalry is. Records go out the window here. North Quincy under Ryan Craig, a guy that I actually coached way back when I coached semi-pro football in the EFL. Ryan played middle linebacker for us when I coached the Quincy Granite. And he is the best football player, pound for pound, I've ever coached in 30 years. He was essentially another coach on the field. I co-coordinated with him. He was a dude. He was a dude in high school at North Quincy. He was a dude in New Haven. And then he was a dude in the EFL. Nonetheless, Ryan's done a great job with that North Quincy program the last few years. He's got them back on track. Quincy made the playoffs this year. They had a nice season. Two pretty evenly matched teams here. This game is a toss-up every year, Tyler. You think that the better team is going to win it, but they end up losing on Thanksgiving. It always goes back and forth. This one should be no different.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a fun one. Maybe not as fun as that 6 overtime game against Plymouth North, but I think Mike Galligan's going to be the best player on the field, North Quincy quarterback. He's a very good player. Underrated quarterback across the state, and I think he's going to be the difference. I would be surprised to see him account for 4 or 5 touchdowns in this one. I think a lot of points are going to be scored in this one, but I like the Red Raiders.
Yeah, I think so too. I do think a lot of points are going to be scored, but this North Quincy team, which, by the way, they've been really good offensively the last 3 years. I think that the potency of that offense is still in place. You mentioned Galligan. This is his swan song. I think he has a big morning, and I think that the Raiders get it done and pick up a win over the Presidents in one of the best matchups of the day. Our Paul Varzella is going to be there for that one. All right, next up we have Duxbury Marshfield. Of course, Duxbury is going to be playing rival Scituate for the third time in 4 years in the Division IV Super Bowl. Marshfield losing to King Philip on Friday night, 34-15. Marshfield is hosting. Still plenty on the line here for Chris Aruka's squad, though. Certainly you want to win the Patriot League. You want to win your side of the Patriot League. Of course, this game was shrouded in controversy a few years ago when former Duxbury coach Dave Mameron opted to sit his starters. Marshfield ended up getting a blowout win, but that game served as the impetus for coaches now opting to play their starters. This is a terrific rivalry. I do think that Coach Landolfi will play his guys, and I do think we'll get a great game between these two longtime rivals, two of the best programs in the state.
Yeah, for sure. It seems to always be competitive, at least when the teams play their starters. Duxbury's been in this position. Duxbury's in this position pretty much every year, and Landolfi's been playing his starters, so I think we'll see them play the starters again. They're not like Duxbury stylistically isn't the same as King Philip, but they still have guys that can run the ball. We saw what King Philip was able to do on the ground last week against Marshfield. I think guys like Trevor Jones at quarterback with his legs, guys like Jack Reese, again, he's really kind of emerged as this key cog in the Duxbury offense. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. It's going to be a great game, but I can't pick against Duxbury here. I got the Dragons by a touchdown.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great game as well. I think that Duxbury has played, when you look at their scores this year, they've been in a lot of tight games, and they're battle-tested, and that's how they ended up back in Gillette. I think this will be another tight game here. I'm going to go the other way here on you, though. I think that Marshfield, this senior class, a very good senior class that has had a lot of success, goes out on top. Tor Moss, Davin True, Charlie Carroll, your favorite skill group of all time. Those guys have one more big game in them, and I think that proves to be the difference for the Rams. They finished their season on a high note. Some other games that are of interest, of note real quick, and I just want to get your thoughts here, so I'm going to go rapid fire. One of the ones that's interesting to me is Northbridge at Uxbridge. Of course, these two teams played last weekend in the playoffs. It was a La Chapelle Bowl. It's the La Chapelle Bowl 2.0. Uxbridge is arguably the most underrated program in the state, and I don't think that's hyperbole. I don't think we talk enough about them. This should be another fantastic game here. Who does round two go to in this one?
It's going to go to Uxbridge as well. I think this Uxbridge team is just a well-oiled machine. They're able to really run the ball, put pressure on you. They play good defense. Spartans win this one again. Might be a little bit closer, but Spartans win again.
Matt Blood has done a tremendous job there. I'm with you. I'm going to go with Uxbridge as well. And I think that Division 7 Super Bowl is going to be one hell of a matchup with Mashpee. Next up, we have BC High taking on Catholic Memorial. This game will take place on Baker Street. Of course, BC High losing to Xaverian on Saturday. Catholic Memorial will take on King Philip in the Division II Super Bowl next Thursday night at 8 p.m. The Knights are the number one team in the state going into Thanksgiving and into the playoffs. BC High, great first season, in my opinion, for Paul Zakauskas and his staff. They're only going to get better. I think they're going to be a factor in the Catholic Conference and in the D1 playoffs. Catholic Memorial, I mean, what needs to be said about them? Kais Flannery, Mackay Dodd, arguably the best backfield in the state, quarterback, running back. Big offensive line. We know about their perimeter skill. We know about their secondary. BC High is going to have their hands full in this one.
They are going to have their hands full, but I think just the season that BCI has had to this point is a success for sure. I don't know what people were really expecting in year one of this new regime, but it's definitely been a success. They've had an awesome season. Only losses to St. John's Prep and Xaverian. And that game got away from them against Xaverian. They were kind of in the driver's seat there in the second half to win that game, and then things just kind of went a little haywire for them. But it's been a very good year. I think they're going to be able to compete with this team, compete with CM for a bit in this one. Again, we've seen them beat Xaverian. We've seen them beat Springfield Central. We've seen them beat two very skilled teams. It's going to be good for, I think, maybe a half. I think ultimately, though, CM probably wins by 2 or 3 scores. They're just going to pull away. They have too many horses. Mackay Dodd, he's the biggest home run threat in the state. I think he's the difference. LaShawn Sharp, he ran for a 97-yard touchdown against Wellesley. There's just too much skill, too much speed. I like the Knights.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, ultimately, you mentioned Dodd. I mean, he is the ultimate home run threat in the state of Massachusetts. He gets a crease, he's gone. I think BC High can hang. They can play tough here for 3 quarters, but I think ultimately CM pulls away. I don't know if they win by 3 scores. Also depends on how much they decide to play their starters. Again, my guess is Coach DiBiase is going to play his starters. This game means something to them. They want to obviously make sure that they've clinched the Catholic Conference. I think that they do get it done. I think they win by a couple of scores, but I think BC High can certainly be competitive in this one. Next up, Weymouth Walpole. Interesting matchup here. Mike Donovan, of course, has done a terrific job with that Weymouth program the last couple of years, taking them to the playoffs. Both years he's been at the helm. Walpole made another late season run, almost got back to Gillette. This has developed into one of the better rivalries in the game. It's also one of the more intense rivalries in the game. This game will be at Walpole. This should be a pretty good game once again between two schools that have a genuine disdain for each other.
Yeah, I think like Walpole and maybe Billerica were like the hardest teams to figure out throughout the entire year. Like they would have this enormous win one week and then an enormous letdown another week. Walpole actually beat Billerica in the playoffs. So it's just really, I don't know. It's hard to say which Walpole team's going to show up. So I think that Weymouth's just been more steady throughout the year. I'm going to go with the Wildcats here. I don't feel super confident in that, but I like the Wildcats. I think it's going to be a very close game, though, something like 28-21.
Yeah, I'm going to go Walpole here. I think Noah McKenzie finishes his career on a high note. Should be a really good game. I like that 28-21 score. I think that it makes sense. The weather could be a factor here. Weymouth does like to control the ball with their running game and set the pace, and I think that could be a problem for Walpole, who likes to spread things out and throw the ball with McKenzie. But Dylan Needham, that running game has come along. I think that the T-Wolves, I still can't get used to calling them that, by the way. I think that the T-Wolves win, which should be a good game, a close game down the stretch. And, of course, finally tomorrow night, you have Swampscott and Marblehead in one of the best rivalries in the state. Swampscott, of course, losing in the playoffs this past weekend. Marblehead lost a couple weeks ago to Grafton. Should be another great game. Marblehead had a nice season, nice bounce-back season for them. And, of course, Swampscott also, under Coach Peter Bush, had a nice bounce-back season for them. This should be a pretty good game between these two longtime rivals. Should be the best of the 4 games that are taking place between tonight and tomorrow night at Fenway. Of course, right now you have Stone and Reading, which is also another great game, and we'll get you a score there in a sec. But thoughts on Marblehead, Swampscott, and who do you like in that one?
Yeah, these are two good teams. They've kind of both had sour notes to the sour ends to their seasons. Marblehead lost big to Grafton. Swampscott, we just saw they ran into the buzzsaw that's Fairhaven and Justin Marks. So I think this is always a good game, always a competitive game. Kind of like an interesting story to follow here is like, will Marblehead have its entire coaching staff for this game? Because it looks like that strike has ended in Marblehead, I believe. So I wonder if they'll have that entire coaching staff.
We don't have enough time for me to get into that and share my opinions. I thought that was effing ridiculous. Yeah, and the kids got caught in the crosshairs of a labor dispute. And once again, kids have changed. I don't care what anybody says. I argue this with people all the time. I do think kids have changed because the times have changed, Tyler, but kids are still kids. And for them to get caught in the middle of that and to not have their coaching staff for a playoff game, shame on the powers that be. Shame on them.
Yeah.
A different decision could have been made, and it wasn't.
Yeah, for sure. I think I lean Marblehead here. They started off with a pretty tough start to the year. Lost big to Fenwick. Lost big to KP. Kind of right to the ship there. They're playing great defense for a while, and then they lost to a very good Grafton team. I think Marblehead's a better team here. I think they have a little bit more skill. They're very good defensively. I would expect this to be a low-scoring game, something like 17-14, 14-10, something like that, but I've got the Magicians.
Yeah, I don't see it being – this used to be a rivalry that produced big points between the two schools. I think that they're stylistically a little different now, but – yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to go with Marblehead here as well. I think they want to finish their season off on a high note. I think Swampscott's got some good days ahead, though. There's some good young talent there. But I think ultimately, I think that Marblehead, provided their coaching staff has been practicing the team and can coach them in this game, which we're to assume they will be. I'm going to give them the slight edge here, and I'm going to go with Marblehead, which would be a good game and a close game. By the way, update from Fenway Park right now. Stoneham is leading Reading 21-7. 21-7 Spartans after a Sean Kilty 27-yard touchdown run. So Bob Almeida was able to rally the troops and get them back on track after a tough playoff loss a couple of weeks ago. All right, we're going to go out of state here. We're going to go down to Connecticut for a couple of big ones in Class LL and Class L. Of course, we're going to start with Class L. The big one of the biggest Thanksgiving games in New England this week. You've got Darien traveling to New Canaan in what should be a fantastic game. Of course, these two met. They had a great game last year on Thanksgiving. Then they ended up meeting for the Class L state title, which, of course, went to New Canaan. Look, this is one of the best rivalries in New England. I fully expect this game to be a back-and-forth affair. I think ultimately what it comes down to is who's going to get key stops in the fourth quarter. We know both of these offenses can score points, but it's going to come down to which defense can get some key stops here. I'm going to go Darien here. I think it plays out like it did last year, potentially. I do think that these two could end up meeting each other again in the Class L final. But I'm going to go Darien here. I think Ben Rolap and company, Roach, they have a big day offensively, and I think that proves to be the difference in what could be another high-scoring affair.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be high scoring. I think they both can score, but they both play good defense as well. So I'm kind of interested to see what kind of game it is. I'm going to say something like 21-17. I don't think it's going to be that high scoring. I like New Canaan. I think they head into the playoffs on a high note.
I think it's going to be more than that. The reason I say that is, again, I think you have a lot of really good skill in this game, and I think that's going to be the difference. Can Darien stop Esposito? He's been one of the best receivers in Connecticut this year, and of course, we know about the Roach Tom connection. We know Ben Rolap can get those guys the ball. I think it's going to be a higher scoring game than that. In my opinion, I'm going to go Darien, but I hope selfishly, and this isn't a knock on the other schools in Class LL, I hope that at some point, I'm not saying that they need to see each other in a title game again, but I hope at some point these two see each other again in the playoffs because these games are too good not to. And then, of course, the other matchup to keep an eye on, and it's the Class LL matchup, and that is Staples versus Greenwich. This game, again, will be on Thursday morning. Staples is hosting Greenwich. Adam Behrens and the Wreckers, he got his team back on track. They lost to Greenwich earlier this season. Greenwich, of course, led by quarterback MJ D'Angelo. They've been pretty consistent all season long. One loss. Both of these teams have one loss. They're going to be going into the playoffs with some momentum, but this is a big game as usual in Class LL. Staples doesn't have the star power they had last year with Caleb Smith and company, but they've been pretty good, pretty consistent. They know how to win. I just think MJ D'Angelo is such a dynamic difference maker at quarterback. He's been the key cog to that offensive attack all season long. Not too many teams have slowed him down or even stopped him. I don't know if Staples does. I do think, though, that he proves to be the difference, and I'm going to go with Greenwich in what should be a good game and a close game.
I think it will be, too. I think it's going to be a fun one. Two of the better teams in the state, really two of the better programs in the entire region. I think Staples is going to find a way to get it done. You mentioned they don't have quite that star power that they had in the past, but it's a really good program, and they just kind of reload each year. I like Staples here. Again, this is a true toss-up. I think out of all the games in New England, this is the one I had the most trouble picking. I go Staples, though.
Yeah, should be a great one. And there's a bunch of great games on Thanksgiving in Connecticut. So make sure, of course, you're following along with us once the CIAC playoffs begin next week. We'll have coverage of, some of the playoff games leading up to state championship Saturday in a couple weeks. We'll have all those 6 games covered for you as well. All right, now I'm going to go up to New Hampshire real quick. D1 state title game on Saturday. I don't know if a lot of people had both of these teams here. But in my view, when you look at this matchup, Londonderry Pinkerton, it's the Blue Bloods of New Hampshire high school football, two of the best programs in the state for a long time. Pinkerton, of course, upsetting Bedford, Londonderry beating Exeter. This should be another great matchup between two programs that obviously have a lot of history and know each other well.
Yeah, so they played earlier in the year. It was a blowout. I don't think it will be a blowout this time. I think I like Pinkerton here. It's honestly, I didn't expect either team to be here. I thought it was going to be Exeter against Bedford. I was surprised by both results last week, but again, like, how can I really be surprised? Because these are kind of the two teams that are the class of New Hampshire year in, year out. You know, these teams are going to be competitive. I like Pinkerton here. I think it's going to be pretty close game, 7-point game, 8-point game, something like that. I think it's going to be a one score game, anyone's game down to the final minutes of the fourth quarter. But I've got the Astros.
Yeah, two of the best coaches in New Hampshire, in my opinion, two of the best coaches in the region, Jimmy Lazan at Londonderry, Brian O'Reilly, the legend at Pinkerton. This is a hard one for me because I could see this being a tight game. I could see this being a game won in the trenches. And if it is, I do think Londonderry has an advantage there. But it's hard for me to pick against an O'Reilly coach team. People have heard me say this on this show now for years, how much I love their Delaware wing tee and what Coach O'Reilly does out of it. He does a fantastic job. They run the wing tee. Look, I coached in the wing tee in the early years of my career. I love that offense. I know it well. And to see them run it the way they run it, and they run it so well. I saw them a couple of years ago against Brockton. I couldn't have been more impressed. Their ability to run the football, control the clock, and then make a big play action pass over the top, I think, is going to be the difference in this one. I think it's going to be close. It's going to be a 28-21 kind of game, 26-21 kind of game. I'm going to go Pinkerton, but if you told me on Saturday afternoon that Londonderry won the state title in New Hampshire, it would not surprise me. I think it's going to be a fantastic game, and hat tip to Pinkerton to knock off that Bedford team, a team that was steamrolling their way to a third straight Division I state title. I mean, I had tip to Zach Matthews and his staff at Bedford. What a run for them. And believe me, they are nowhere near as done. They're going to be one of the favorites again in D1 next year. But again, it just speaks to why Brian O'Reilly's a legend up there and why he has run one of the best programs in New England since he's been in charge. And I'd be remiss, of course, if I didn't mention congratulations to Coach Sean Green and the Portland Bulldogs on an impressive 35-14 win on Saturday in Portland, beating Thornton Academy to win the Class A state title. They got the gold ball. It's been a long time for the Bulldogs. Last time they had won the gold ball was 2002. They have lost 5 consecutive state title games in Class A. And for Coach Green and his staff to get them over the hump finally, they've had pretty good success. I don't think people outside of Maine realize how good a program Thornton Academy has been through the years. They have arguably been, from a statistical standpoint, the best program in New England when you look at the amount of championships they won through the years. But the Bulldogs are 3-1 against them in their last 4 meetings. And that's a testament to Coach Green and the job he and his staff have done at Portland. Portland football is back. The Bulldogs are going to be a player we're looking forward. I did speak with Coach over the weekend. I'm going to have a piece up on that conversation. And we also have a piece up on the game. And I'm also going to have him on the coaches chat after the new year. So he is one of the best coaches in New England. In my opinion, he's done a fantastic job with that program. And the Bulldogs are here to stay. Congratulations again to them. Real quick before we wrap up, of course, we do have the MIAA Super Bowls next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I don't understand why the games are not being played either Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Friday and Saturday. It's disappointing to say the least. Apparently, according to the MIAA, it's not their decision. It's a Gillette decision. So, in essence, it's a Kraft family decision. Disappointing nonetheless. I don't understand why we have to play state title games on Wednesday, but nonetheless, we don't call the shots. We just go there and cover the games and provide content for the fans. Just some early thoughts. We're going to do the preview show next week, so we're not going to give you too much here because I know Amaral has a lot of thoughts here. But just real quick, give me some thoughts on each game, starting with Division One. We're going to go 1 through 8, even though that's not how they're going to be played on the schedule. But just some thoughts on each division, Tyler.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing here in Division One is out of the 16 teams that'll be playing at Gillette, there's one team that's never won a Super Bowl. That's Needham. So school history could be made there for Needham. I believe it's only the second time they've ever made it to a Super Bowl. They lost to BC High in 2011. So good to see some new blood there, right? I think that's good. I don't think anyone would argue that. Public versus private, whatever. I don't even care about that. It's just good to see some new blood there. It's been a hell of a year for Needham, regardless. But school history again could be made here next Thursday.
And Division Two, of course, for the third time in 4 years, Pitt's Catholic Memorial against King Philip. That game will be played on Thursday night at 8 p.m. And by the way, the Division One Super Bowl will be played on Thursday at 5:30. Again, whatever. I really have to be professional here, but it drives me nuts. Nonetheless, I digress. It should be a good matchup. I mean, look, King Philip went toe-to-toe with them a couple years ago. CM was able to pull away in the second half. We know how good the Knights are. We know how good the Warriors are. It should be a pretty good matchup.
It should be a good one. I think KP has what it takes to be competitive in this game. Like we saw, Xaverian is the only team that's been competitive with CM. CM's
outside of Cardinal Hayes, who beat him.
Yeah. Outside of Cardinal Hayes, right? I meant against in-state competition.
Yep.
They've dominated everyone. They've won every game in-state by 28 plus points. Other than that Xaverian game, they're hands down the most dominant team in the state of Massachusetts right now. We know about all the talent. 4 BC commits. I'd bet that list grows.
Yep.
There's a lot of skill there, but I think KP has the formula to kind of keep things close. John, you know as well as anyone, not apples to apples comparison, but that North Andover team in 2018, they were dominating everyone, and then KP was able to make that a 6-0 game and make it competitive. I don't think it'll be that low scoring, but you get the point. I think KP plays good defense. They play sound defense. They're going to limit the big plays from CM, and they're going to run the ball. So I think if anyone could pull an upset against that CM team, it's a program like KP.
In D3, we have an all-Hawk matchup for the second time this season. North Attleboro takes on Mansfield. That game is the final game of the slate. They will play on Friday night at 8 p.m. North Attleboro beat Mansfield 3 weeks ago, 14-10. Should be another pretty good matchup between these two. And what is an early thought on that one?
Yeah, so my early thought there is I think I like this time slot. I know you think Division One should be in this spot, but I think 1, 2, and 3 should be the nightcaps for each of the nights. I'm happy this is the final game. You get the Foxborough game right before it, and then this Mansfield North crowd. I was talking to Adam Kirchen about this. That crowd's going to be by far the best of the bunch. I think that's going to be an awesome crowd, awesome atmosphere. 2 football towns, 2 proud programs, Super Bowl on the line, division rivals. Like it's just everything you could ask for. I was at the first meeting. I expect this one to be similar to that. It's going to be a low-scoring game, grind them out, physical. I really can't wait for that one, but I'm really looking forward to seeing the crowd for that one. I think it's gonna be a great one.
Yeah, well, I still think the D1 game should be in that slot. But I do think no matter when you play that game, you're going to get a great crowd. And geographically, they're both very close to Gillette. But you could have played that game in the middle of the night, and you would have gotten a great crowd. So, but nonetheless, it is going to be the Friday night game at 8 p.m. And to your point, it should be a good one. Division 4, again, third time in 4 years. You got Duxbury Scituate. Early thoughts on that one?
Oh man, this is the rubber match here. A couple years ago, Scituate, I think Scituate was the higher seed, but I think a lot of people were surprised that they beat Duxbury. Keegan Sullivan had that 2-point conversion in the final minute of that game to push the Sailors past Duxbury. So I think this is like a real toss up. These are 2 great programs. Herb Devine's built something special there at Scituate. This is the rubber match. We'll see who comes out on top. This is the last at least we can't get this matchup for at least the next 2 years with Duxbury moving up to D3. So this should be one hell of a game.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a fantastic game between these two programs who know each other very well. And to your point, this is the last year we're going to get it, at least in the next two, because of realignment. D5, another fantastic matchup under the Hockomock School, Foxborough, the defending D5 champ. They're back at Gillette. This time they take on Slingin' Sid Tildesley and the Shawsheen Rams. They beat Shawsheen on their way to Gillette last year. They're playing Shawsheen this year, of course. Shawsheen, this is their second trip in 4 years to Gillette. This is going to be a fantastic matchup. This game is going to be played on Friday at 5:30. And by the way, Duxbury and Scituate is going to be played on Thursday at 3 p.m. Again, I do what you want with that. But a great game like that is going to be played at 3 p.m. on Thursday. In any event, thoughts on an early thought on Shawsheen Foxborough?
Yeah, my one thought for this one. Can Shawsheen be the second tech school to win? We've only seen one tech school win since we moved to this statewide alignment. That was Blackstone Valley Tech. I believe that was 2018. I believe they beat St. Mary's, but they're the only team so far in the history, 11 years of doing it in this format. BVT is the only tech school to win a state championship. So can Shawsheen become number 2?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. D6, you have a tremendous matchup between two offenses that are contrasting in styles, but a lot of star power in this one. Jake Attaway for Hudson, Justin Marks for Fairhaven. Should be a fantastic game. Early thought on that one. That is going to be the night game on Wednesday night, the 8 o'clock game.
So which record breaker comes out on top? Jake Attaway, one of 5 quarterbacks in state history to reach 10,000 career total yards. Justin Marks, the state's all-time touchdown leader. You mentioned these teams do it entirely different ways, spread versus triple option, but they both rarely score, and they can both play defense as well. So the question there is just which one of these historic players, Attaway, Marks, which one comes out on top?
Division 7, another great matchup. You're going to have Uxbridge versus Mashpee. Mashpee back at Gillette after a strong run of appearances at Gillette in the mid-2010s, taking on an Uxbridge team led by Matt Blood, who's looking to go back-to-back. Early thoughts on that one?
Yeah, can Mashpee pull it off? This one, so they've been there 4 times. They went in 2011, 2015, 16, and 17, and they haven't lost at Gillette. And I think they were probably the favorite entering each of those games. This one, they're not the favorite, though. So we'll see how they kind of embrace this underdog role. I think a lot of people consider them underdogs against Clinton, and they fared well, obviously, in the state semifinals. So how does Mashpee embrace that underdog role here against Uxbridge, a team that looks like arguably the best small school program in the state?
And I've said it, since we found out who's playing who. I think this is going to be one of the best slate of games we've had at Gillette in the last 5 years at least, because the Division A matchup is going to be it's going to be a fight in a phone booth here with Randolph and West Boylston. West Boylston going for the three-peat. Randolph making their second appearance in 4 years at Gillette Stadium. Again, I think that this has the makings of being a fist fight in a phone booth. Early thoughts on the D8 Super Bowl matchup. And, of course, this game is going to be played on Wednesday at 5:30.
Man, this is going to be fun. This is going to be a fun one. It's just, can West Boylston slow down that running game? I know they both run the ball really well, but that Randolph running offense has been really prolific throughout the season. They do it with multiple.
And by the way, I take that back. It's Friday at 3. That game's going to be played Friday at 3, not Wednesday at 5:30. As soon as I said it, I'm like, double check that because I don't think it's right.
Uxbridge Mashpee's Wednesday at 5:30.
It is.
Yeah. But yeah, this is gonna be an awesome game too. Which running game is gonna come out on top? I don't know. Set an over under on pass attempts in that game. I would say like 6.5.
I'm gonna say 6.5. Oh boy. I'm gonna say over. I think between the two of them, they throw the ball 8 times.
8 times, okay. That's something like that. It's not gonna be many though. But I like it. I like that. I like that sort of brand of football there, especially West Boston. They run that double wing offense. So, which running game is going to come out on top? Which team can get a stop? That should be a really fun game, though. I'm not going to say though, this is the best slate that we've seen in quite some time. Anything like that. I'm not going to do it because I say it every year, and then we end up with 40-point blowouts. So I'm not going to say it this year. I'm just going to wait for the games to arrive, and hopefully we get some good ones.
We got a ha 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 from Trevor LaChapelle. So I don't know why he's laughing, but thanks for checking in, Trevor. All right. So final thoughts here as we head towards Thanksgiving and state title week next week. We got a busy stretch coming, my friend.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we're nearing the end already, which is just crazy. But we've got
sad. I can hear it in your voice. Like I know you like your high school hoops too, but basketball is not football. Let's get
football is definitely my favorite. I'm looking forward to basketball season too, but football is definitely my favorite sport across the board. High school, college, pro, doesn't matter. It's definitely my favorite sport. Man, I don't know.
Trevor laughed at the over 8. I said, by the way, I said over 6.5.
Over 6.5, yeah. So,
but eight's going to be pushing it. I think we all agree on that.
Yeah, 8 probably is pushing it. I think I'd take the under on 6.5. But get out there, enjoy some games. Put on a raincoat. Don't be afraid of the rain. Go out there on Thursday and enjoy some football. There's football tomorrow night too, and then there are plenty of ways. If you can't make it to Gillette, you can watch it, on the Patriots YouTube channel. You can listen to it on the radio. So
USBK is also going to be carrying the Thursday and Friday games.
Yeah, I think the EEI AM 850 AM.
They'll be on the radio as well. Yep.
Yeah. So no excuse. You can watch it even if you can't make it there because of these funky start times. There are other ways to watch. So definitely tune in for some great football.
Yeah. I will say this. My final thought is I don't understand why, with the Patriots on a bye, why at least 4 of these games aren't being played Saturday. I think it's ridiculous. And I think once again we're going to have the same tired conversation about, is it time to start thinking about moving them out of there? And I always push back on that because my feeling is I've coached in Super Bowls at Gillette. I've covered the Super Bowls there. It's an awesome venue. It's an awesome experience for the kids, the coaches, and the families. I don't want to see them moved out of Gillette, but I don't understand for the life of me why you're not playing at least 4 of these games on Saturday. It just makes no sense to me. I get it if the Patriots are home the next day and it creates some logistical issues, but they're on a bye. So there was no reason not to play on Saturday. Clearly, the Crafts and Gillette Stadium have other views on that, so it is what it is, I suppose. All right, that'll do it for this week's episode of the High School Preview Show. For Tyler Amaral, I'm John Sirenides. Get out there and enjoy the games tomorrow night, Thanksgiving morning, and, of course, get out there next week for the Super Bowls. We will have our MIA Super Bowl preview for you next week. Until then, have a happy and safe Thanksgiving. Peace.